Hi, my name is Richard Goerling, and I'm a police lieutenant in Oregon. For the last decade, I've been a student of stress and trauma and resiliency. And currently, I'm an affiliate faculty member at Pacific University's Graduate School of Professional Psychology. And there, I'm a co-investigator and trainer in a 2-year National Institutes of Health funded study where we're training mindfulness-based resilience to police officers in the Portland metropolitan area. I've also had the privilege of having a parallel career in the United States Coast Guard Reserve. Just last year, I retired after 27 years of service, both active duty and in the reserve component. And finally, I'm a consultant and trainer and author on issues surrounding resiliency for public safety. In today's video, I have 3 objectives. The first one is to normalize your experience with stress and trauma on the job. Secondly, I want to introduce you to the new science of resiliency and discuss why stress management is a fallacy. And finally, I want to offer some opportunities for you to chart your path forward with some actionable steps that you can take to improve your resiliency in all of the dimensions of your life. So our current stress management wellness paradigm in public safety has done little to impact positively the health and well-being of the first responder over the last few decades. So let's talk about resiliency. Resiliency has a lot of definitions, and the definition I like to use for resiliency is that it's the capacity to perform through trauma. And it's really that simple. And we can teach skills that enhance our capacity to perform through trauma. But first, let's take a look at the landscape of suffering in public safety, because it's important to look at just some of the research that's been done that helps to inform why the health and wellness or stress management paradigm may not be working so well. So to Buffalo, New York. Dr. John Violante is a former police officer and now psychologist and professor in Buffalo at the State University. In 2004 through 2009, his research team did a study at the Buffalo Police Department, and they found some very helpful and informative outcomes. First, they discovered that police officers were 4 times more likely to suffer from sleep deprivation than the general public. Similarly, they were 2 times more likely to suffer from depression. 40% of police officers were measured as obese, and they found an increased risk of obesity, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome among police officers as compared to the general public. The other data that was reported by John Violante and some other researchers in previous studies is perhaps the most alarming, and that is that police officers live, on average, 7 to 10 years less than their contemporaries out in the general public. And similar studies have found the same results for firefighters and other first responders. So as we shift our mindset from stress management towards resiliency, we actually have research out there that shows that we can make an impact on all of those health metrics that were discovered by the BCOPS study in Buffalo, New York. So moving to a model of resiliency, moving away from a model of reactive stress management, really will make a difference for us. And so the resilience model in its simplest form that we've developed here in Oregon involves what I like to refer to as the head, the hand, and the heart. So first of all, let's talk about the heart. Let's talk about emotional well-being and psychological well-being. So the ingredient to that is simply preventative mental health care. So a resilient first responder has a mental health clinician that they visit on a regular basis. Now, we're not prescriptive on what regular basis means, but nonetheless, having a mental health clinician that we see on a regular basis is critical in order to manage and navigate through the stress and the trauma of the jobs that we do. Secondly, the hand. Fitness and nutrition. Critical component, but in and of themselves, not enough. And there's a continuum of how we manage fitness and nutrition, whether we're going to choose to be a paleo diet person or a vegan or whatever that might be in between, or whether we're an ultra athlete, a CrossFitter, or maybe we just simply want to walk the dog every day. But moving our body with awareness is critical in that arena. But the real interesting component here, and the new component to all of this discussion around resiliency, is with regard to the mind. The new science of interpersonal neurobiology that has emerged over the last decade illuminates this thing that we call the mind and allows us to look at ways to train the mind to rewire how our minds respond to trauma. This is where mindfulness comes in. And mindfulness is simply learning how to become aware of what's going on internally and become more aware of what's happening around us. And we might want to refer to that as advanced situational awareness. And it really begins on the inside. And it begins with learning how to sit and breathe and pay attention to the experience of that. We'll talk much more about that in subsequent videos. We have some practices that we can do with that. But finally, we really want to shift the conversation from stress management to resiliency. And then we can begin to have dialogue surrounding post-traumatic growth and vicarious resilience, and shift the relationship to the stressors in our lives such that we learn how to flow through them rather than to bump up against them and have conflict with stress. And this particular practice of mindfulness teaches us the skills to be able to do that. So if we piqued your interest on the topic of resiliency and mindfulness or mind fitness, here's a few things you might consider to be helpful as you move forward. First is I encourage you to seek some of your own training and coaching in the area of self-awareness. It's simply this practice of awareness that leads us to a greater capacity to perform in all the dimensions of our lives. And the first thing you might want to do is take a look at Kelly McGonigal's TED Talk from 2014. Kelly does an amazing talk about the new science of stress and resiliency. It's very entertaining, and it's also very informative. And I think it really sends home the point about stress management being a fallacy and really the need for us to transform how we view the world as opposed to try to transform the world around us. Other resources you might find helpful are apps for your phone or devices. One of those apps is one called Headspace. And Headspace is a little more gritty app for meditation than some of the others that are out there. And I like to recommend that to first responders. Another new one that's out on the market that's a little gritty as well is called 10% Happier. And that one is driven by Dan Harris, an ABC News correspondent who also wrote a book by the same name that is a really good read for the little more gritty population of first responders. Another really helpful book is one called Resilience. Eric Greitens, a former Navy SEAL, does a beautiful job of shaping an experience of a warrior who navigates his trauma with the help of his shipmate, former Navy SEAL Eric Greitens. Really, really good read and worth listening to. Another good book is called Nerve, written by a journalist here in Portland, Oregon, named Taylor Clark. My second recommendation is simple. See a mental health clinician. And this is a really, really difficult one for us to do for all kinds of reasons. But I'm here to tell you that if we seek out a mental health clinician that we can visit when we really maybe don't think we need it, when we do need it, having access to that, having paved the relationship, having paved just the understanding of how that works is incredibly helpful. Preventative mental health care is really, really important for our resiliency. So to say it again, see a mental health clinician. The third thing I'd recommend is to move your body. This is the fitness and nutrition component. So we don't have to go out and become an ultra athlete. We simply need to begin by moving our body and paying attention to what our body's telling us. Very, very simple, but not so easy to do for most of us. Finally, make a plan. I like to recommend that you pick up just a really inexpensive journal and take notes. Take notes about your experience of being more aware of what's going on with your body, what's going on around you, and begin to write down some of that experience. Begin to write down things that you're grateful for. This idea of journaling our gratitude has powerful impact on our health and well-being and on our performance. So to summarize the 4 recommendations: first, seek some training and coaching in self-awareness. Second, see a mental health clinician. Third, move your body and listen to it. And finally, make a plan. I'd encourage you to check out the next video in this series, which is a 10-minute guided meditation. And I'm hopeful that that will be a really useful resource in your journey towards resiliency. Thank you.